happening in Sudan. But before I do that, we need to go back to a time before the war. The month of Ramadan at dawn on June 3rd, 2019. About 2 months earlier, the military has taken charge after former President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown from power. The place, in front of the headquarters of the General Command of the Sudanese Army. Osman was a young man in his 30s, present at a peaceful civilian sit-in in the center of the capital Khartoum, demanding the transfer of power to a civilian government. A military convoy reached the edge of the sit-in area, and when the police and rapid support forces surrounded that area, protesters chanted, "Civilian rule! Civilian rule!" a reference to the civilian government that they wanted instead of the military rule. But armed forces opened live fire on the protesters right after dawn prayer during Ramadan, while people were fasting. At least 120 people were killed, and hundreds of others went missing. Osman says, "We tried to push back the rapid support forces, but they surrounded the area and fired at us. 3 of my relatives were killed in front of my eyes, 2 men and a woman. When we tried to transport the bodies, I felt an injury on my head. I lost consciousness and did not wake up until 3 days later in the hospital." The bloody events Osman experienced that day, which claimed the lives of dozens, were documented in a 60-page report by the Human Rights Watch. They refer to the massacre by the name, the General Command Massacre. But did those who wrote this report imagine that 4 years later, that 60 pages would not be enough to document the atrocities of war committed by the same people who committed the crime against Osman, his family, and his friends? And that because those perpetrators got away with their crime the first time without being held accountable, it opened the door for them to ignite the flames of war in the country. A war proceeded.
Isn't that really how it goes, though? Like, the simple fact that, like, atrocities could be, like, committed, people could be, like, essentially wiped off the face of the earth in mass. And because no one does anything about it, yeah, you have a couple people that talk about it. You have, world leaders, "Oh, no, we need to stop that genocide that's going on. Oh, we need to stop." But nothing ever gets done about it. And then these people become emboldened. It seems like a common theme. Like, it literally, when I think about it, you get situations where, like, certain countries, you get China who tells, like, who's like the police of the world at some points, is like, "Oh, what's going on in Palestine is unbearable. It's human right violations. We shouldn't be doing that." But then the whole time, they got like 2 million Muslims in camps somewhere. You know what I mean? And vice versa. Like, the United States speaks very openly about the treatment of Muslims in the Uyghur. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. The Uyghur Muslims and how they're in encampments, but they're also enabling, Israel and what they're doing. So all of this seems like a game, but
Preceded by a final iftar session. Sudan has had repeated experiences with prolonged conflicts and civil wars. And so we would like to think that its leaders have learned from these experiences to avoid dragging the country back into these dark days. But in April 2023, a new war broke out. And this time, it's not just in one area, but in the entire country. So how did we reach this stage of war in April 2023? Between the armed forces, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the rapid support forces, led by Hemeti. Will this continue for years, like other wars in Sudan? And what were the events that happened that led to that last iftar, which caused the war to break out after? I'm Khalid Al-Bey, a cartoonist and Sudanese activist, and I'm here in collaboration with AJ Plus to break down what's happening in Sudan. To those who say that the issue in Sudan is simply a problem between 2 military men, then what comes to mind is, well, the solution is simple. But the story is much bigger than that. So what happened? Let's start with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who have been waging a war against each other since April 15, 2023. And the fight for power between them continues till today. Just days before the war, they were partners in power. Hemeti and Burhan are not 2 military men who found themselves in power by coincidence. This is them in 2019 in the Transitional Military Council, Burhan as president and Hemeti as his deputy. 2 military leaders of 2 armies in one country. The first army is the Sudanese Armed Forces led by Burhan. The second is the Rapid Support Forces, previously known as the Janjaweed, who are described as the militia group led by Dagalo, a militia leader. But how can a militia leader become a part of the government and also be so powerful to wage a war against the army? For centuries, Sudan had a long history with the military, and it was with the start of the British occupation that sparked the modern formation of the Sudanese army in 1925. In 1955, the British, who occupied Sudan, left, and the independence was declared, leading to a civilian government. But since politicians disagreed on the form of this newborn state, this sparked conflicts between the parties, which became the beginning of politicians calling upon the military for help. In 1958, Ibrahim Aboud led the first coup, followed by another one in 1969 led by Jafar al-Nimeri. This allowed for war to take over parts of the country, paving way for the third coup in 1989, which brought Omar al-Bashir to power, that led to 30 years of dictatorship on Sudan and its people. And this 30-year rule, which caused internal...
You guys ever realize how, like, whenever, especially with African countries like Somalia, you know, you very rarely hear about disagreements to this scale before colonization. And then after these countries become colonized, and then the colonizer essentially just bounces and just leaves, you know, without putting in the proper infrastructure in place and making sure that these people can self-sustain and self-govern. You know, they leave, and all of a sudden these people that were once considered themselves all one are broken up into factions. And now it's that group versus this group. And, you know, it's a common theme, at least in Africa, you know, from what I understand.
Political instability, multiple crises, and wars across Sudan ended with a chant from its people: just fall. تسقط بس.
حكومة الموت تسقط بس. حكومة الجوع تسقط بس. حكومة الذل تسقط بس. حكومة الموت تسقط بس. حكومة القهر تسقط بس. حكومة الغاز تسقط بس.
After widespread popular demonstrations, the army responded by ousting Bashir from power, leading to the fall of his regime in April 2019. After ousting al-Bashir, a transitional military council led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, with Hemeti as his deputy, ruled for several months. Due to ongoing demonstrations, an agreement was reached in August 2019 with the civilian power to form a sovereignty council, chaired by al-Burhan. This council included both military and civilian members. This power-sharing arrangement lasted until the military 2021 coup attempted against the civilian component of the council. During this time, the two initiated normalization process with Israel. Sudan was removed from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, and the Juba Peace Agreement was signed.
There we go. Yeah, is that surprising? It's not too surprising that certain parties are in, you know, certain parties are involved here, you know? And then we wonder why there's like a ethnic cleansing or a genocide happening in Sudan. Yeah, let's listen to that again.
Civilian component of the council. During this time, the two initiated normalization process with Israel. Sudan was removed from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, and the Juba Peace Agreement was signed in 2020 to end the war in the country. But did the political situation really change? Civilians returned to a state of push and pull, and this time, not with the soldiers, but among themselves. Now, Sudan, a country already suffering from economic crisis and political division, faced yet another coup. It was in October 2021 that the military takeover took place, led by those two men that ran the Sovereign Council, Burhan and Hemeti. They claimed that the coup was to correct the path of the revolution. After the coup, Burhan announced that the military would hand over power to an elected government before July 2023. But that didn't happen. What happened was something else, bloody and frightening. Why was it that the two men in power and agreement during a critical period of the country's history turned to disagreement at the cost of its people? This time,
why is it? I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty obvious, at least if you're from that part of the world, because the story remains the same, right? Like it's whether it's Somalia, whether it's Sudan, whether it's, you know, any of these other countries in East Africa that are constantly in turmoil, and you know, we get these leaders who, you know, happen to come into power, you know, at the foot end of some sort of like international intervention, you know, in these countries. You know, these people become our leaders, and all of a sudden, no matter what the right answer is always going to be the wrong answer in their opinion, right? Like you could see that, you know, we have solutions that could be very obvious, that could be very achievable, but they tend to turn away from these solutions, and they always pick what seems like the dumbest or maybe even the hardest path, period. And it kind of makes you wonder, is that by design? Is that a coincidence? Is it really a coincidence that these two countries started like normalization with a certain power, and all of a sudden, on the brink of just coming together and unifying, all of a sudden they have a disagreement? I hope they tell us what the disagreement is in here, because like it doesn't seem like it's anything worth people dying over.
They couldn't move forward alone. The military was forced to sit down again to negotiate with the civilians. And at this particular point, the signs of division between the two men began. In December 2022, they reached an agreement, and it talked about bringing the democratic transition back on track after the attempted coup, forming a civilian government and preparing for elections. But despite this, differences began to clash, to the point where they started competing to arm themselves. However, the major point of disagreement was that all military forces in Sudan, including Hemeti's rapid support forces, were merged into one army. And that raised the alarms for Hemeti. Al-Burhan was adamant about his conditions regarding how and for how long integration processes would take place, insisting that it should happen within a year. However, Hemeti had a different vision, stating that the process would take a decade. Hemeti did not want to lose the power he spent 20 years building. Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti, from the Arab Rezagat tribe in Darfur. While there is a lot unknown about him, people say that he's in his 40s. And his tribe is known for trading and camel herding. He founded a local militia to protect the camel caravans. His business expanded, and he even owned a furniture store in Niala, the capital of South Darfur. For centuries, African and Arab tribes coexisted in the region of West Sudan, but the region's conditions mirrored that of the entire country. Desertification, drought, internal displacement, and agricultural policies that ravaged everything. Signs of discord between Arabs and non-Arabs began to appear since the 1980s, especially after the famine that hit the region. It led to the rebellion that erupted in 2003 against the central government in Khartoum. Non-Arab tribes...
Wait, I know like famine and drought are not the same thing, right? So famine is definitely man-made. Let me see, I'm gonna give you guys the real definition. Extreme scarcity of food, right? So they try to connect this with, you know, drought and lack of like crops and things like that. That's not always the case. Famine has, you know, it's especially in Muslim countries, especially in Africa, famine has been used as a tool of control. Like, have you guys seen what's going, like, hold up, this, not to get sidetracked, but we'll come back to that video because I really want you guys to see this right here. Let me see. Look at this. This is what famine does essentially, right?
Bismillah ar-Rahman.
This is, and by the way, oh man, I'm not gonna say it because some of these ads about I want to see if they have actual videos of like people running and stumbling and basically stampeding and then them being fired at, you know what I mean? Like soldiers firing at the people trying to get food. Like this is a real life situation in Palestine as well. And to be completely honest, famine is not something that's naturally created, right? Famine is something that is politically driven. It is a source of control, and it is how they try to bend people to how, you know, a power, whatever that power may be, or whatever that, you know, country or organization may be. That is how they try to get, you know, the natives of another land to bow to their power or bow to the will of their power or their will. That's just a fact.
Tribes rebelled against the government's neglect of the region's development and its bias towards Arab tribes. The government in Khartoum did not want to intervene directly this time, so it took an easier solution: proxy war. Omar al-Bashir's regime supported the establishment of the Janjaweed militia, composed of Arab tribes, to suppress the rebellion, and the name Janjaweed matched.
That's another thing. Proxy wars should be illegal across the board. across the board, because there are countries and there are people who are suffering from proxy wars to this day. Proxy wars that they themselves are not involved in. Like this kind, like I'll give it to you in this sense. Like, let's say I have an issue with someone, right? Me and this other party have problems. Now, instead of that party coming to my house and we getting, tussling and fighting in my house and destroying my furniture, or vice versa, me going to that, party's house or place of residence or place of business and causing a disturbance there, we both pick another party that has nothing to do with this, and we go fight at their location, their house, their place of business. So essentially what it does is that it saves you from destruction, it saves me from destruction, and these people right here, well, they're the voiceless. And so, it is what it is for them. It's whatever. It really sucks, because Syria has been going through that for like almost 20 years.
Which is the meaning. Jinn on horseback. Sudan was set for a new chapter of tragedy. Killing, displacement, and rape. Crimes perpetrated by those men and documented in rights reports. Hundreds of thousands fell victims to this war, and around 3 million people were displaced. Amid all the bloodshed and war, Hemeti was climbing the ranks and emerged as one of the leaders of the Janjaweed in South Darfur and in other areas. The man became a warlord. So, what did that mean for al-Bashir? Despite all the atrocities committed by the Janjaweed militia, led by Hemeti, in support of al-Bashir regime, and despite the regime's support for them, Hemeti rebelled against al-Bashir in 2007. But later he said he didn't actually intend to rebel. All he wanted was to attract the government's attention, to gain higher military rank and political position. Hemeti was looking beyond being just a warlord fighting a proxy war for the country's president, and he got what he wanted. The Bashir regime granted him the rank of brigadier general, despite the fact that Hemeti had never set foot in a military school in his life. Hemeti forces, once one of the Janjaweed factions, transformed into something resembling an imperial guard for Omar al-Bashir. The Rapid Support Forces were founded from the Janjaweed, and Hemeti began appearing everywhere. Military parades, television reports, and it was even said that al-Bashir called him Hemaiti, my protector.
See, that's kind of new, and that's very weird. Because, like, apparently, and by the way, we're going to take everything that's going on and everything, this video we're going to take with a grain of salt. It's going to take a lot more, it's going to take a lot more research to actually understand what's happening. And, because like they say, it's always that your side, their side, and the truth, So, but it's kind of interesting to find out that this guy Hemeti literally acknowledged or admitted openly that he literally just became, as a warlord, he just basically got into this fight to basically get the attention of the Sudanese government and just to become, like, a higher position in the Sudanese government. That's a very wild thing to admit. Like, you're basically saying, yes, I'm partially responsible in the death of all these people, and yeah, I just did it to get a better position in the government. Like, and they, a lot of people do that, but it's very rare to hear someone admit it. That's kind of crazy, actually.
Against al-Bashir in 2007. But later he said he didn't actually intend to rebel. All he wanted was to attract the government's attention, to gain higher military rank and political position. Hemeti was looking beyond being just a warlord fighting a proxy war for the country's president, and he got what he wanted. The Bashir regime granted him the rank of brigadier general, despite the fact that Hemeti had never set foot in a military school in his life. Hemeti forces, once one of the Janjaweed factions, transformed into something resembling an imperial guard for Omar al-Bashir. The Rapid Support Forces were founded from the Janjaweed, and Hemeti began appearing everywhere. Military parades, television reports, and it was even said that al-Bashir called him Hemaiti, my protector. And
look, I'm pretty much over this. We're gonna skip ahead and see if we can get to, like, this is basically the precursor to what's happening in Sudan today. So, and I just wanted to kind of bring that to light and just to kind of show you guys how this all started out. Much like all the other, just much like the rest of the world, this conflict started way back, like during the colonization period, and that sucks. But, I really just wanted to highlight what's happening in Sudan, because I feel like a lot of people, we constantly, every single day, talk about what's happening in Palestine, but we don't actually take time to understand and appreciate just how serious what's happening in Sudan is. You know what I mean? Because in Sudan, I read this one article where it said children are eating peanut shells, like actual peanut shells, the shells of peanut, and they're eating hay, like animal feed. They're eating animal food and drinking dirty water because there's nothing to eat or drink for them. There is nothing for them. These are kids. And when this world became a world that, like, the starvation, the hunger, the thirst of the innocent is completely okay at this level, at least, is beyond me. I don't understand it. I don't know when we got to this place. I don't know how this happened, but it is a common theme. And it is happening all across the world. It is happening in Palestine. It's happening in Sudan. There are about 2 million Asian Muslims that are in encampments somewhere in China right now. But you know what was the craziest? And I'm not really going to speak about that because you know what was the craziest thing ever is that there was a point when, you know, we knew that, like, you know, there was a blockade in Palestine and food and drinks weren't getting through because of, you know, the occupier. And so China literally broke the blockade, and they went and they did a food drop and water drop on Palestine, and the entire Muslim world celebrated. The whole time China has 2 million Muslims in encampments in their side of the world. This is crazy. This is crazy. Not to mention, I got to look at a map, but I'm pretty sure China has to fly past Sudan to get to Gaza to start with. It's all a game. It's all a game. It's all a movie. Because this is happening on a regular basis, and it's happening all over the world. And then every once in a while, they'll just use something different to distract you from what's going on right now. The most dire situations are the ones not talked about. And it sucks. It sucks. And I don't know what more to say about it. I don't know. I mean, obviously, at this point, like, if humanity hasn't woken up yet, if the Ummah hasn't woken up yet, I don't know what more to say that's going to help do it. I just really wanted to be able to do my part and present some of this stuff to you guys because I don't want here. Let's also, let's do this. Let's look up this, what's happening in China's part of the world, right? There we go. This is what's happening in China. Six years ago. This has been going on for a long time. But let me try to find some sort of network or something that I kind of... Let's look at who they are. It's just insane to see this happening in our lives today. But I guess it's whatever. Oh.
The Uyghurs are an ethnic group that mainly reside in Xinjiang province in China. They are currently in the media spotlight due to the repression they face at the hands of the Chinese Communist government. But they have called northwestern China their home for more than 1,000 years. Their history extends even further back than that. Like many other groups of steppe people, they have experienced things such as the establishment of a huge nomadic empire to the mass migration of the entire ethnic group. The ancient history of the Uyghurs is an especially contested topic amongst historians. This is not helped by the fact that the early history of the Uyghurs is murky and not very well documented, making it tough to...
For I'm shooting for what's happening right now. Let me see. It's not really what I'm looking for.
There is a genocide happening in Xinjiang in northwest China today. Okay, there are 23 million Uyghurs in that province. All of them are surveilled individually. 2 million, upwards of 2 million of them are in concentration camps as we speak. 80,000 women have been forcibly sterilized. 600,000 children removed from their families. I mean, this is just unspeakable evil that's happening today. We should not.
That's a real life thing that's happening. Like Uyghur, no one talks about them, and that's the craziest thing on earth. NBC did a bit on it 6 years ago, and it's happening till today. It's still going on. I heard this video. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to video call. So like there was this video that I watched. It's basically a Uyghur woman who essentially called she called a hotline for an imam or a sheikh. I don't know how real this is, but this is what I heard, and I'm gonna pass it along. Hopefully it's real. And she just basically is like, she's asking the sheikh, she's like, what is the fatwa on unaliving yourself? Because basically she's in a predicament where she's in an encampment. She's literally in a concentration camp, and there are, they're forcing themselves on her every single day and night. And at some point she's like, yo, what is the fatwa? What is the ruling in Islam to unalive yourself? And we know what the ruling is, right? But then when you have someone that's faced with that severe of a circumstances, it's very hard to look at it like it's just clear cut. And just, it's clearly not permissible. Why would she even act? It's very hard to say that. I don't know. It feels bad, and I hate it. But this is what's happening, unfortunately. And let me see if I can find that phone call. Yeah, this is Muhammad Hijab. I didn't know he did something about it. You know what? We can watch Muhammad Hijab's.
Well, I have a flag that you can replace your flag with. Take this Uyghur flag and stop them. I tell you today, your best bet is actually to become Muslims. That's your best bet. You should actually learn from the Uyghurs. You should actually learn from them the purpose of life, to worship one God. Stop.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the purpose of that was. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's like some sort of, context there that I'm not catching. So we're gonna push forward and oh no. Damn, I kind of wrote it wrong. I should say phone call. I can't find it, but you guys get the point. And when I find it, I'm gonna pass it along. But it's really sad, and it's really happening, unfortunately. Yep. So that's my first stream. Inshallah ta'ala, more to come. That's my first stream ever. I'm streaming onto YouTube, and I'm gonna obviously clip this up, and it's gonna go up on TikTok and Instagram at some point. So please continue. Anybody that sees this, please support, show some love, and hopefully, inshallah, I'll feel more comfortable doing this in the future. That is the plan. Hopefully I'm gonna start, even on what is it called? I want to get into like Twitch and things like that as well, because I think this is very needed. I would really like to have like adult conversations with you guys, and not talk about the same thing that they're talking about on the rest of the internet, which is just a bunch of bull crap that doesn't help humanity move forward in any way, shape, or form. That's not going to help our children, our youth grow, you know? And that's me. Thank you.